I spent the last 3 months building this LED door from scratch. I had no woodworking experience, no tools, and no idea what I was doing. It's the wrong way. What?
How? The f did I this?
Why did I do this to myself? Because I'm turning this room into the ultimate crafting and gaming studio, and I needed a bathroom door. You see, just a few weeks ago, this room looked like this. There wasn't even a door yet, which is great if you enjoy waving at your neighbors while answering nature's call. Because the size of the door opening wasn't standard, I had two options. I could pay someone a few $100 to build a custom door for me, or I could spend 10 times that amount and do it myself. Guess which one I picked? Let's rewind back to the beginning to get the answer and see how that went. So, I didn't have any woodworking experience when I started this, or much DIY experience in general. The biggest thing I ever built was a 3D printed Iron Man helmet, and lots of custom gunpla kits. Yep, if you didn't know, I'm kinda nerdy. But I've been watching DIY and woodworking videos on YouTube for a long time. Wow, nice ear. So while I had no experience, I kinda had a general idea of how things would go and what tools I might need. The thing is, I live in Thailand. And it's not that wood is hard to find here. It's that most of the creators I watch on YouTube are based in North America, working with materials that just aren't really common here or are simply very expensive. So when it came to picking my materials, I wasn't sure what to look for. After doing some research, I settled on teak for the door frame. It's a durable hardwood that's naturally resistant to humidity and bugs. Two things we've got plenty of in Thailand. For the door panels, I didn't want to use hardwood. I wasn't confident enough. I thought plywood would be a better option. And I looked into using birch plywood, but it was pretty damn expensive. So instead I chose rubber plywood. Buying the wood was the first step towards turning this room into the proper studio I wanted. And I knew that if I couldn't even build a simple wooden door, then the rest of the plan was gonna be a lot harder to justify. With the wood figured out, my next step was to buy some tools. After looking around and checking the prices of Milwaukee, Festool, DeWalt, all of them seemed like way out of budget for a newbie like me who's just getting started. I'm never gonna financially recover from this. I wasn't even sure that I could actually finish this door, so I couldn't justify putting too much money in those tools. Instead, I went with the cheapest brand I could find, Inco. So I picked up a kit with a bunch of tools in it from that brand. It came with a drill, an impact driver, a grinder, some batteries, and a few other small accessories. I also bought a circular saw because I did need a way to cut some wood. And finally, I also got a shop vac to try and keep things clean. I added a few clamps, some PPE, and a bunch of measuring tools and jigs. That was enough to get started. Of course, over the following weeks, I did buy a few more things. At that point, my goal was simply to build a simple wooden door. That felt like something manageable for a first woodworking project. Here's the quick drawing I sketched to guide build. By the way, when I started building this door, there was no plan to put LEDs in there just yet. That idea came a little bit later. The teak boards I ordered were 2 meters long. I only needed to cut one of them down to 68 centimeters for the top part of the frame, but I didn't want to mess up that single cut. So I built a cross-cutting jig out of plywood for my circular saw. Not only did it give me a bit of hands-on experience, it also made it much easier and safer to cut the frame, especially since I ended up needing 4 cuts. The first cut was too long. The second cut was still too long, but the wood wasn't the problem. It was hitting some concrete in the corner. I quickly got rid of that very gently installed the board, and that part was done. I installed the left side of the frame and moved on to the right, but somehow that one did not fit. It turned out the top of the door opening isn't perfectly straight, so the right side had to be cut shorter. So I made another cut. It still didn't fit. I took it out again, with elegance, of course, shaved off a little more, and this time it slid in perfectly. I measured the width I had for the door, then I pulled all the bolts out, clamped the corners, pre-drilled the holes and drove a couple of screws into each joint. Small accomplishment? True, but to me it was the first real sign that this weird idea might actually work. Building that jig helped me with crosscuts, but it also taught me something very important. I'm kinda bad at cutting straight lines with a circular saw. I tried using a straight edge. I even bought a jig from Craig, but I still couldn't get clean, consistent results. I thought about building a proper guide out of plywood, but in the end, I went with a simpler and more expensive solution. After way too much research and hesitation, I decided to get a track saw. I was this close to buying a Festool, but at $1,000, it just didn't make sense for a beginner. So instead, I bought the cheapest one I could find. A brand called Gemma. It only cost me around $100, and honestly, it made a huge difference. Cuts that had been frustrating suddenly felt effortless. I quickly broke down the plywood into all the parts I needed. A 2 meter by 60 centimeter core, 4 stiles and 6 rails. Next, it was time for the glue up. I started it with one side of the door, beginning with the stiles. I brushed on the glue, spread it evenly, clamped everything in place, and let it set for a few hours. Honestly, I'm still kind of amazed at how strong wood glue is. I used every single clamp I had, hence the beautiful yet random assortment. Next came the rails. Same process really. The middle rail was a bit trickier. Clamps alone weren't enough to hold it in place, but a scrap piece of wood clamped on top of it did the job just fine. Once everything was dry, I flipped the door and repeated the whole process on the other side. And just like that, a weirdly specific 62 centimeter wide door had been made. Unfortunately, I messed up. You see, I ordered sheets of plywood that were being sold as 10 mm thick and used that to make the door. 3 layers to be specific. But I missed the part on the product page that stated that the boards were actually only 8 mm thick, and I didn't recheck when I got them. So when I went to check the total thickness of the door, just to confirm that my handle would fit, I had quite a surprise. I needed the door to be at least 30 mm thick to work with the handle I had bought. But the door was only 24 mm thick. But could this be a blessing in disguise? Building the frame and the door had given me some confidence in my skills. Since I needed to thicken up the door, I thought it was time to upgrade that boring wooden door into an amazing LED door. So I ordered one more sheet of that so-called 10 mm plywood and glued it on top. I wanted the door to be nearly invisible within the wall, so it had to be flat. And my plan was to route channels within the top layer to install the LED tracks. The other side of the door will remain the same and look like a traditional door. That's what you gotta hit the gym. If you wanna do woodworking. Once it was dry, I used one side of the door as a reference to square up the entire thing. After cutting it all up, I made sure the door still fit within the frame. Next, I wanted to install the hardware, but the frame was still missing one crucial thing: door stops. Those little strips the door actually rests against when it closes. You know, the thing every door has, but nobody ever thinks about, until now. You're welcome. To install them, I placed the door inside the frame to get the spacing just right. And I added painter's tape to make sure I didn't accidentally glue the strips to the door itself. That would have been extremely annoying, as you can imagine. I had ordered some thick strips for the door stops, but options were pretty limited. The best I could find were 1 meter long, about 3.5 centimeter wide, and only 5 millimeter thick. Not ideal, especially since I needed them longer and thicker. No, I won't make the "that's what she said" joke, but go ahead, say it in your head. I'll laugh. Ha. Anyway, I had to improvise. I glued some strips together for thickness and some side by side for length. In total, I needed 20 of them, 16 for the sides and 4 for the top. Now, these strips were far from identical, and I don't have a planner. So I did what any sane person would do. I tried to match the most similar ones and hope no one would look too closely. Then came a new tool: a nail gun. It was a game changer. Each strip got a bit of glue and a couple of nails to hold it in place while it dried. And it ended up looking not so great. But I had a plan for that. First, let's take care of the hardware, as promised. I couldn't wait to install it and actually test out the door. In order to install the hardware, starting with the hinges, I had to learn a new skill: chiseling. Like a proper newbie, thinking I knew enough from watching countless woodworking videos, I got to work and made a mess around the hinges. Unfortunately, I've lost the footage, but you just saw the aftermath. Let's move on to the handle, for which I had to drill 2 big holes, one for the handle and one for the latch. But my drill kept getting stuck, so I upgraded to the hammer drill. It was still struggling, and the drill bit was getting pretty hot, so I switched over to the latch hole, which was a bit easier to drill. I then went back to the handle hole, and that's when things got smoky. It took a lot of smoke, perseverance, and sweat to get through the entire door. Luckily, I didn't start a fire. I now had to do some more chiseling for the knob part of the handle and the strike plate. Not wanting to repeat the mess I made for the hinges, I decided to do some more research. After watching a couple of videos, I understood the mistake I made for the hinges. You see, I hadn't cut the surface of the wood, which resulted in entire chips of wood being broken down as I chiseled. I was also trying to take off way too much material in a single pass. With that newly acquired knowledge, I think I did an okay job with the chiseling. And I got the handle installed by following the instructions. I was so excited that it actually worked, I called out to my wife right away. Mila! She didn't hear me, so I just kept working. Next, I had to take the door off to get the frame into the right position to chisel the strike plate recess. Then came the cleanest chiseling job of my life, which, to be fair, isn't saying much. Hi, this is Future Thibaut. You've made it pretty far in the video, so you must be enjoying it in some way. So can I please ask you to like the video and comment and maybe share it with your friends? That would help tremendously. And of course, if you want to see more, don't forget to subscribe. Thank you. Oh no, stop. Oh, he didn't hear me. Oh yeah. Eh oui mon petit, aïe 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 indeed. And And then I finally installed the strike plate. Since I had a chisel handy, I also used it to flatten the door stops a bit too much. Oops. Well, time to fix all that with wood filler. I'm back from Japan. Let's continue the door. Remember when I said I had a way to fix the unequal door stops? Well, you see, as I have previously casually mentioned, I've 3D printed and painted an Iron Man helmet in the past. One tip I found online when I was working on it was to use wood filler to fill in the layer lines before sanding everything smooth. Wood filler is pretty magical. It just hides all the imperfections and gives you a smooth finish. So I wanted to do the same thing here. Look, I do have some holes to fill. This one needs some filling. Yeah, it's gonna be better, much better. I think I was a bit too generous with the wood filler. I basically frosted this door frame like a cake. I also put some wood filler on the door itself, but I ran out. I'm all out of wood filler. Good stuff. Is it though? Although it looked terrible at that point, that was only because wood filler is only half of the magical equation for smoothness. The other part is sanding. Lots and lots of sanding. I may have spent more time sanding on this whole project than everything else combined, but I'll spare you the hours of footage and get to the point. I started sanding, then I sanded some more. Then I thought I was done with sanding, so I primed the frame, which revealed lots of issues. I had to sand some more, so I built a quick jig to hold the frame upright and make the sanding a little bit easier. After that, I sanded, and sanded some more. And then, one day, out of nowhere, I was somehow done with sanding the frame. Well, not entirely, but the most boring part was behind me. So I primed it again and called it done. Well, more like ready to be installed. The door is finally ready to be installed. It's primed and it's not perfect, but I think it's good enough. There still are some spots I want to fill with wood filler, like over here. But I think I'll do that once it's installed. So I think today I'm just going to install it. So I went ahead and did just that. I installed the frame inside the door opening, which means that we have finally reached the first milestone and this project actually seems to be getting somewhere. Honestly, not bad. Check this out. That was a huge boost of motivation for me. So I adjusted my entire schedule just to spend more time with my door. No, I don't have a problem. Anyway, I started waking up at 5:45 a.m. Huh? There we go. Nice. And getting all my consulting work done by lunchtime, leaving me the entire afternoon to sweat in my workshop. And with that, we're done. This is not going anywhere right now. Often, I would ask myself why I was doing this. But then the thought of the finished LED door would pop in my mind. And I would still question why I was doing this. No. No, right? It's the wrong way. What? Oh my god! Oh my god, I was so scared for a second there. Oh my god. With the frame fixed to the wall, I brought the door over and actually tested it for the first time. Handle and everything. Are you ready? This is it. First real test. In 3, 2, 1. Get stuck at the bottom. Oh well. Still closes pretty well. Check this out. Well, the top of the door scrapped the frame a little bit. But that was nothing a bit of hand planning couldn't fix. Also, I hoped. Foreshadowing. I've made a door. Bye-bye. I'm going to the toilet. I need to show my wife. Ta-da!
Wow, so cool! Nice.
I made a door! I know it's dumb, but I'm just so happy right now. Just looking at the door. Now let's remove the door and continue the work. If I'm ever going to turn this room into a spaceship, a studio/gaming room, I want the door to be merged with the wall, sitting flush and nearly invisible, apart from the flashy rainbow LED lights, of course. So I used more filler, not the wood kind this time though. Wall filler did the trick here. So I filled in the seams between the door frame and the wall.
That one's pretty damn clean.
Then I sanded some more. If you ever do this, please wear a respirator. Once this was done, I was covered in white dust, but happy with the result. Time to go back to the fun part, the door. I had a new challenge to face now, using a router. But before turning that scary machine on, I had to draw the design on the door. I made a high fidelity render of the layout I wanted. The design I chose was pretty simple in the end. I kept telling myself I didn't want to overdo it with too many LED strips, but the truth is, more channels meant more potential mistakes. This design felt like a good compromise between awesomeness and simplicity. With the design drawn, I was ready to use a router. I picked the most appropriate router bit and installed it. I didn't have one wide enough for the tracks, so each track would require 2 passes to get the right width. But that tool was even scarier to me than the circular saw or the track saw. With those, I could make sure my hand stayed far away from the blade. The router though, with a tiny bit of metal spinning at insane speeds just a short distance from my fingers, I wasn't feeling confident. I was also worried it would try to run away from my hands the moment I turned it on. So I rewatched the same video from 731 Woodworks about using a router a few times. Clockwise inside the shape, counterclockwise outside. Got it. I checked the depth I needed based on the aluminum tracks, then tried everything out on a piece of scrap wood. That test on scrap wood worked pretty well, so I went ahead and started writing the channels in the door. I remember gripping it so tight that my forearms were sore afterward.
God, routing is dusty. It's crazy.
Here are my 4 tips for using a handheld router as a beginner. But please remember that I know nothing and this is just from my personal experience. Tip number 1. Hold it tight as especially when you turn it on. Tip 2. Keep both hands on it if you can. I always try to.
Beautiful. What a nice fit. Wow.
Tip 3. When you're done, turn it off and wait for the bit to stop spinning before lifting it. Tip number 4. Never ever work tired. Seriously. As I'm editing this, Drew from Drew Build Stuff just released a video where he got hurt using a handheld router. If that video had dropped before I started this project, I might have never dared to build it. I really look up to Drew. He builds amazing stuff and makes fantastic videos, and I'm glad he's okay. All that to say, I'm also glad I went through with the build. But if you ever try to make an LED door like this, please be safe, and if possible, learn from a pro. There weren't any courses or workshops around me, so I had to wing it. Anyway, I spent a couple of days routing the 3 channels. No CNC assistance or anything like that. Just some good old geometry, lots of guide setup, and a few swear words when I didn't clamp tight enough and things shifted. I also messed up the original plan for the handle.
How? The f did I this?
But that turned out to be a good thing.
Oh well. I'll see you tomorrow.
I tried to figure out a solution, but ended up just going through the handle. So now this was just 1 track instead of 2. A few mistakes later, I had 3 somewhat clean channels forever ingrained in my door.
So I messed up a lot. Like, a lot. We've got... Yeah, messed up. This whole thing is a mess up. Yeah, and here, messed up. Yeah, messed up. That's pretty good though.
Don't worry about the mistakes though, cause I bought more wood filler. With the channels in place, I grabbed my grinder and cut the LED tracks to fit inside the zigzagging line. I had ordered 2-meter long tracks for the sides and I was still waiting for them. We've reached the most exciting part, electronics. First, I quickly set up a workstation. Okay everyone, we got a problem. I don't have a chair. Should I walk on the floor? Nah, just go buy a chair real quick. Found this beauty. Oh, perfect! And yes, I already have a lot of stuff. Because you see, while I had zero woodworking experience going into this, I did play with electronics before. For this project, I'm using a QuinLED D-Quad board. Basically, it's a smart LED controller with an ESP32 microcontroller at its core. It comes preloaded with WLED, which lets me control everything from my phone. The LEDs are cob strips. Still be strips? Cob strips. So they already have a diffuser and they are addressable in chunks of 7. So each segment is around 6 to 7 centimeters and one segment can only be one color. If the last 3 sentences made no sense to you, no worries. All you need to know is I can control the door lights with my phone, which is awesome. Anyway, I already had everything else I needed really. Soldering irons, heat gun, wires, and a suspicious amount of crimping tools. You may be surprised by me choosing this DIY approach instead of buying Govee lights or whatever. Well, the truth is, this is way more customizable, which is exactly what I want for this weird nerdy door and my future projects. Of course, that also means I had to wire everything myself. So I got to work. I first tested the board, the power supply, and the LEDs. Everything lit up just fine. Whew. Well, there we go. Nice. My phone. Yes. Oh, that's so cool. Well, that's it. Done. Well, not quite. Next, I wired the board to the PSU and added 2 simple connectors for LED strips to make my life a little bit easier down the road. Okay, this is scary, but here goes nothing. It should work. You ready? Then I brought the setup over to the door and figured out the layout.
Wow.
Once I had a plan, I made some wire extensions since the controller will be mounted in the ceiling, so I needed longer wires to reach the door. After that, I did more soldering for the strip around the handle and for a new connection under the door that's linking the center strip to the right side. I only used 2 of the 4 ports that are available on the D-Quad, leaving me room for future upgrades because of course I'm gonna add more LEDs to this room later. Finally, I pulled out the router again to carve out channels at the top and bottom of the door. Just enough to hide all the wiring cleanly. I also needed to organize the board and the PSU, so I 3D printed a design made by Feisty Acorn from Thingiverse. Once everything looked good and still lit up correctly, I pulled it all out again. Nice! After the excitement of putting in the LEDs, we have a little bit of boring work to do. First, we're gonna need some wood glue. First try. You may have forgotten, since we haven't really worked on it much since the first few minutes of the video, but this door actually has 2 sides. Yes, shocking, I know. But the back of the door is inside the bathroom, and after this video, you'll probably never see it again. But I will. So it still has to look good. Well, good might be pushing it. I'm going to steal a page from someone north of the border here and say, it just has to look good enough. So I flipped the door over and finally installed those little fancy sticks of wood to make it look like, you know, a real door. I then grabbed my favorite thing in the world, wood filler, and I used it to smooth out every tiny nook and cranny on that side of the door. I also put a healthy amount of it along the edge to hide the plywood layers. Then came a quick sanding session, followed by a couple coats of primer. And that's it for now. We'll come back to the dark side of the door later for the final coat of paint. Time to install the LED aluminum tracks. Also, why does aluminum only has 1 eye in North American English? What, do you say aluminum? Aluminum? That sounds weird. The French version is like the British one. Aluminium. With 2 eyes. Anyway. But the only problem is that we do have a few spots that looks like that don't look good at all. You can see a big hole that we need to fill. Small hole, small hole, small hole. Long tracks have like quite a big gap as well. Again, nothing wood filler can't fix. But before we use any filler, let's fix the tracks in place. I'm pre-drilling and countersinking holes before screwing the tracks to the door. Everyone's wishing me a happy birthday because today is my birthday. And I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing, which is working on this wonderful LED door. And with that, we're done. Got all the tracks installed. And it's a beautiful, if I say so myself. Oh, look at this, this looks so good. I swear it's peanut butter. Just like the door merging with the wall, those tracks should merge with the door itself, becoming one. So I'm adding wood filler, not only in the places I messed up, but pretty much everywhere else as well. That should help blend them in. Wood filler is the goat of this project. And there might be more wood filler than actual wood in this door by the end of it. And I don't have a problem with that. Let me know if you do in the comments. Then we're doing more sanding, this time on this side of the door. I'll spare you the details because I'm nice. And although I know I have that one subscriber who loves sanding, it might just be the exception. So here's countless hours of sanding in just a few seconds. After that, I primed the door. But right after the first coat, I remembered I had just decided to use a different paint for the door. A 3-in-1 that already includes a primer. Oh well, more primer can't hurt, right? I still did an extra coat of primer on the accent section, since I'd be using a different paint there. Originally, I was going to use this orange paint, but decided to use spray paint instead. I wanted a better glossy finish. To be safe, I masked off the accent part before painting the rest of the door with this dark bluish grey color. And yes, some of my friends argued there's literally no blue in it. Let me know what you think. I do see just a tiny bit of blue in that grey. To avoid turning the entire workshop orange, I built a spray booth out of shower parts and, well, trash. Desperate times call for creative measures. I masked all the blue-grey painted parts of the door and brought the door to the spray booth before spraying it. And yes, it's orange. I love orange. Both Goku and Naruto were orange as well, so everyone must like it, right? I mean, apart from my wife. The shower booth kept the color contained, but still released tons of nasty particles in the air. So I put on my respirator, turned on my air filter, and opened the door. Do you like orange? What color would you have painted the door? Let me know in the comments. The following day, I pulled out the door from the shower/spray booth, and it promptly collapsed. Oh well. It knew that its job was done. Very careful. Let's do it. That's nice. It was time for the frame and wall to get a makeover. I cleared out the room and painted the wall. My sister also recommended painting the AC. She said it would look better. She wasn't wrong, but she probably wasn't expecting me to be so dumb about it. You see, I painted over the entire unit without thinking. That included the infrared sensor, which meant the remote stopped working. Oops. So I had to use some IPA and carefully scrape the paint off until I found the exact spot where the sensor was. Luckily it didn't take too long, and when I repainted the AC, I made sure to leave that part unpainted. Just one more mistake to add to the list, but hey, a mistake only stays a mistake if you can't fix it. Let's go back in time a bit. At some point during the build, I started to hate the handle I had picked. It just felt boring as and I couldn't figure out how to make it better. The old one, which was kind of very bland and round and boring. So once again, I solved the problem by throwing money at it. I bought a cooler looking handle. And from the moment I held it, an an idea started forming in my mind. Could I put LEDs on it? It actually wasn't that hard, aside from having to drill through some pretty thick metal. After that, I wrapped some LED strips around the handle and its base, and soldered everything together. Hot. It was time to give it a try. Do you think it works? Only one way to find out. Oh my god! I can't believe it! It freaking works! This is so good! Okay, I'm in love with this. Oh my god. This is gonna change everything. Oh, so good. I love it. Amazing. Yes, I was quite happy with the result. Next, I grabbed some leftover LED track covers and used a heat gun to bend them around the handle's curves. Finally, I wanted to make some custom diffusers for the round parts of the handle. For those, I used pla plates, basically thin plastic sheets, along with some trash, like the base of an old wire spool. I then combined magnets, superglue and baking soda to assemble them. Then, they just snapped in place. After that, I tested the handle with the door. Since it worked perfectly, I stuck the LED strips inside the tracks and popped the handle into its hole. Then I added the track covers and tested again. Ooh, spooky, but awesome. One of the LED strips ended up a little bit too short, thanks to the last minute handle swap and me sticking it slightly too high. So, yep, another mistake to fix. I removed the old connector, added a fresh LED segment and soldered it back together. It didn't work at first, but I quickly tracked down the bad connection and fixed it. There we go. Out came the glue gun for some quick cable management. Then I closed it off with masking tape. Not ideal, but it will do for now. Next up, more electronics. I added a relay to the circuit so that I could shut down the PSU entirely from the WLED app on my phone. Without it, WLED just sets the brightness to 0. The LEDs still draw power and the PSU keeps running. I also ended up ditching the 3D printed enclosure and replaced it with a proper electrical cabinet. I mounted all the components inside and used electric tape to clean up the wiring. By the way, I've included a link to the QuinLED website below. It's full of great tutorials and guides if you want to build something like this yourself. I had a pro come in to install a proper outlet in the bathroom ceiling to plug the LED door in. I brought the electronic box up, mounted it, and ran the cables. Then it was time. I brought the door over and mounted it. Ah no, that's not gonna work. Oh. Unfortunately, even after planning the top with my hand planer, it still rubbed a bit. Oh well. It closes, it's just not very smooth. I'll fix that later, probably. Alright guys, some bad news. So there was a leak with the AC unit in the small room and they came to fix it and well, now the paint job doesn't look so good anymore. It was also already kind of ruined by the leak. So I ordered some more paint and I'm gonna repaint it. But that will be for another video. Now we need to plug it. I drilled a hole in the top of the frame, ran my cable extensions and connected everything together. I didn't want a giant hole in the frame, but I still needed connectors there. So time for some creative soldering in the most uncomfortable position ever. Cables flailing, arms cramping, classic. Once that was done, I plugged everything in and the door lit up. Woo! check this door out. Oh my god, it looks so cool. To wrap it all up, quite literally, I cleaned up the wiring with hot glue and added a plastic cable channel along the walls to keep it tidy. And then, finally, the door was done. Actually, scratch that. The handle covers I had spent way too much time crafting were not holding up. So I told myself just enough CAD to design a brand new handle diffuser and 3D printed it. It's much sturdier, and honestly, it got me really excited about what else I could design and print next. Now the door is truly done. For real, I swear. I can't believe I actually built this door. And yes, I know way too many mistakes to count. And I'm sure the comments will point out a ton of other things I did wrong. It's all good. Feedback is always welcome and I'm ready to learn. Just keep in mind, this was my first project of this scale. So even with all the mistakes, I'm still pretty happy. I've learned so much building this door. What's next? So many things. First, the workshop I cobbled together to get this door finished is an absolute disaster. So messy. It needs a thorough cleanup, more storage, and some proper organization. And of course, I still need to build all the furniture to turn this room into a spaceship crafting and gaming room with lots of LEDs, of course. And of course, there's all the stuff my wife wants me to build because I've shown her I was capable of finishing a woodworking project. She wants a coffee table, a media wall, and quite a few more things. And while she likes boring furniture, I'll make sure to hide a few nerdy things in there. All this stuff is gonna take time and tools. So if this video hits 10,000 views, I'm treating myself. And I'm buying all the big power tools. A table saw, probably saw stop because I'll be too scared to use anything else. A miter saw, a planer, a belt sander, anything I might need really. So please, help me justify those purchases to my wife by liking, sharing, and of course subscribing. I hope you enjoyed the video and I'll see you soon because the nerd builds must continue.